Welcome to Voices of Global Freedom Radio. We are broadcasting from San Diego, California, Saturday, March the 7th, 2015. This is Roy Backpack Barron and our co-host Yoda. We bring our patriotic conservative audience news you can use and actionable tactics, methods, and strategies to survive and thrive in these dangerous, troubled times. We are proud to be syndicated with the popular radio networks, the Spark Radio Network, K98 Talk, and the top 5 news picks on Top Talk Radio, along with Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh, and other household names. We want Voices of Global Freedom and Magnified View have the Patriotic American Hero Award, and today we have Lieutenant Randy Sutton, a Las Vegas Metro, over 30 years on the force, is a spokesperson of the American Council on Public Safety, dedicated to informing of the public of realities of law enforcement. He is the national spokesperson. Check out the website, defendingtheshield.org. I say again, defendingtheshield.org. Yoda, are we honored to have him as one of our friends?
Are we ever? We met with a good lieutenant day before yesterday. He's a real cop, really. It was great to meet with him. He'd been in 5 gunfights in his time with Las Vegas. Our guest tonight says that if he were any better, there'd be 2 of him. There'd have to be twins. We are privileged tonight to have Stan Walters on. Stan is also known as the Lie Guy. Doesn't mean he tells lies. He's also known as a human polygraph. He travels around the country and the world teaching law enforcement and corporations how to detect deception and lies. Quite a guy. We promoted the show on the front side, and we've got a lot of people really interested in hearing Stan. I'm going to welcome him, and that's no lie. Welcome, Stan.
Hey, thanks, guys. It's going to be great to be with you tonight. I'm looking forward to it.
We are too. Where do we start?
Oh, let's see. How about I've got first interested in interviewing was when I got burned as an investigator 39 years ago. And that's how we learn, is when something goes wrong or nobody prepared us for a task and it blows up in your face. So I was conducting an investigation, and my interview just went terribly, just horrible. And my training officer, took over, and I asked him, I said, well, how did you know that guy was lying? He said, well, you just know. I said, well, but how did you know? He said, well, you just know. I said, well, how'd you get him in fast? He said, I talked to him. I said, well, I talked to him too. He said, yeah, but I'm good. That was the start of my interviewing training. So I understood as an investigator, if I was going to be successful, I had to learn the skill and do a good job at it, or I was going to miss a lot of information and not help my victims.
We have the same training officer. Were you a street cop somewhere, Stan?
No, I've never been sworn. In 39 years of doing this, I started in college working for the FBI, and I was in civilian employee. I was in communications and handled a lot of the top secret traffic and decoding stuff. Then I worked for a $500 million bank. What I did, bank robberies and burglaries and counterfeiting and credit card fraud and protecting executives and so forth. And at that point, I was already doing lots of interviewing. Victims, witnesses, bank robbers, burglars, all that kind of stuff. And I was using tactics that I'd learned through research, through communications, and in trial and error. And was finding having some success, and I'd watch other interviewers and what was working and not working with them. Then somebody asked me, so well, can you show us what you did? So I shared some of what I was doing, and all of a sudden it just turned into a whole brand new career of training and research and consulting for intelligence and military and government police agencies worldwide.
Who are you training mostly these days, Dan?
My biggest group is law enforcement. My second largest group is going to be with military intelligence, and government intelligence combined. So I do work with those guys in anti-terrorist operations, interviewing victims, witnesses, informants, clearing sources. A lot of the military guys, when they're on patrol, literally going through villages, asking for sources and, trying to collect and human intel gathering. So, they've got to make decisions on the spot. Is this information going to save lives, or could we be walking into an ambush, or could we have a blown operation because our source has compromised us?
We do similar stuff. We've got a facility here I'd love you to see someday. We've got a 727 airplane. We've got a MOUT facility, military operations in urban terrain. It is an authentic Iraq village brought from Iraq. We use Chaldean Catholic role players. We'd like to get you out here to take a look at that anyway. I think it's a lot of fun. They're popping up all over. I'll send you the point of contact offline. We listened to your tips on YouTube. We heard 6 tips from you. I thought they were fantastic. How did we find him on YouTube back then?
We searched for The Lie Guy, and they're great tips. There's 101 coming out. We just have really enjoyed one of the big things that we've learned is that back in around the early times of law enforcement, they used to say that they could look at someone and they would evaluate whether this person was a criminal or not, and how that really has been debunked since then. Stan, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. And the initial theories, of course, you go all the way back to the late 19th century with Cesar Lombroso in English prisons, was measuring and looking at the bodies of inmates, and he thought, well, if we could see certain characteristics in the physical look, we could tell that some parts of the human population are devolving into animals. And of course, that was eventually scientifically disproven. But I've still run into some of that, amazingly, in a couple of academies. It's just, good Lord, 100 and something years old, it's been debunked. A lot of what we're teaching in our academies is archaic, is the way it's described in the scientific community. Just tactics that have never changed over 60 years. So we're not really keeping up with behavioral science or with this psychology of understanding human behavior, decision making, and deception, and we just keep using the same old tired approaches that are not working.
You have lit up our emails already. Everybody, here's one from Lexington, the one in Kentucky.
Oh, down the street.
Yeah, he wants to know tips. Here's another one from Lake Charles, Louisiana. She wants to know tips. I'll bet you've heard that before.
Okay. How about we start with some of the myths?
Go.
Things that we waste time on that will misdiagnose somebody. And what could be worse than diagnosing a truthful person as being deceptive? Your victim, your witness, employee, whatever. So some of the most persistent myths that will not die have to do with eye contact. Eye contact is the worst possible thing to look for, least reliable. There's research that's showing that 40% of some subjects actually increase eye contact when they're lying. When the belief system is they'll look away when they're lying. So we're missing that gap. Then the other one is this myth that has really poisoned the well, is you got to watch their eye movement. If they look to the left, they're recalling. If they look to the right, they're constructing. So if you ask a question, he looks to the left when he answers, that's when he's telling the truth. If you ask a question, he looks to the right, he's constructing. So anybody looks to the right is lying. Well, that has poisoned a lot of federal and military and local agencies. And I found roughly almost 100 studies since the late 80s showing that there's absolutely no correlation with eye movement deception. It's a myth that just keeps getting perpetuated. So those are the two biggest myths. But there's other ones like if they fidget, they're lying. If they're sweating, they're lying. Well, if sweating is lying, then a whole lot of grooms are lying their butt off at the altar when they're doing their wedding vows then. So, or if they, or if they groom themselves, play with their clothing, if they fix their shoes and socks and so forth, those have been totally disproven. So body language, now Dr. Paul Ekman's done some very exceptional work in the 7 micro-expressions of the face. And there's 7 expressions that and I'm not an expert in that field, and I'm not going to take it further than that because I don't want to screw anybody up. But what he's looking at is when the verbal behavior doesn't match those expressions. They're out of sync. And so the person's message, if you will, is out of sync or it's contradictory. And has been very good at picking up those cues. The greater value is in speech. But now, that doesn't mean you ask a set program of questions. The best interviewing techniques are narrative, where there's a dialogue going back and forth, and the interviewer follows up. That's the best chance where we're able to find deception in a subject.
Let me interject, Dan. I'm older than a rock. I've been a victim who told me of that eye movement thing for about 50 years.
Yeah.
I was trained in that by a producer at the TV producer at the White House.
Okay.
So you just burst my 50-year bubble.
Well, but now I wouldn't throw that all away either, Yoda, because there's still some good stuff in that. It's the basis of it is NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which is an extremely good communications tool and really good at picking, as an instructor, I try to meet people who are more kinesthetic learners or visual learners or auditory learners. And so that's what it was designed for. That's extremely good at building rapport and making you pay attention and listening to the person's dialogue. But it was never designed as a deception identifier. And even Bandler and Grinder, the two guys who, the founders of that concept, themselves say that is not a tool for spotting deception. But the other parts of that are brilliant for good rapport building and for communication and teaching mechanism.
Except in the Middle East. I traveled the Middle East extensively. And there is virtually no eye contact. That's really hard to do if you're from our part of the world. What about that's going to be pretty good for picking up stress. And one of the things, too, guys, is that because you're under stress doesn't mean you're being deceptive either. Because you think of the victims you've talked to, or maybe you've probably interviewed guys in the field who just witnessed a firefight or an ID or insurgency attack, something like that. And you have some victims that are just traumatized and witnesses. And when you get to talk to them, and let's take it to, for example, a rape victim or somebody's seen an armed robbery where there's a killing, they're going to be heavily under stress. The body tells me that, and their speech does. So what I will do as the interviewer is recognize, okay, he or she is in this reaction behavior, and so my chances of getting good dialogue, good conversation, good information is impaired right now. I need to move them from reaction to response. And a way to think of people reacting and responding, Zig Ziglar had this example, and it's a great one.
If you went to the doctor and he said, "Oh, you're having a reaction to your medication," is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, that's bad. If he says if she tells you you're responding to treatment, that's a positive. Well, victims and witnesses and my subjects do the same thing. They either react, which is the easiest way to interact with me, but it doesn't move the conversation and dialogue forward. If they respond to me, now we're gaining ground, now we're looking for common ground, now we're going to find compliance, now they're going to be cooperative or compliant with me. And that's the same across all cultures.
One of the many shocking things that we've learned, the lie guy on Voices of Global Freedom, is that there's very little training in law enforcement, only maybe, if they're lucky, 3 hours in basic training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did 2 surveys back where I surveyed 1,000 police officers in 25 states. And I asked things like, how big is your agency? 1 to 25, 25 to 50, and so forth. Wondering, too, do bigger agencies do more training or do smaller agencies put more into it? And ask your state, your federal, local, military, if you're fire service, intelligence, corrections, seeing which industry did the most. And I was really surprised that I think the number I found was 40% of the agencies or the people I interviewed only got interviewing training, 2 out of 5. And when they got it, it was less than 4 hours as an average. But my goodness, from the patrol officer, from the day they start the street till they die of a heart attack in front of watching Dancing with the Stars or Sports Center, 25 years later winding the watch, what do they do all day long? They survive on the information they get from interviewing victims, witnesses, and suspects. That's where cases are made. Did I lose you?
Stan, the lie guy, we just got an email from Chicago, Illinois. The person read in a University of Massachusetts article, they said they think published in 2002, that the average person lies at least once in every 10-minute chat. What's your take on that?
That, I've heard the very consistent figures with that, and some of them kind of fun. I think Dr. Bella DePaulo out at University of California, San Francisco, says that about 1/3 of your social conversations has some deception involved in it. I've seen numbers, and it's depending how you define, lie, gray lies, white lies, and so forth. That we tell anywhere from 7 to 25 lies per day apiece. Now, for those of you listening, again, don't worry if you're not getting yours in. Somebody else is making up the difference for you, and it's probably coming out of D.C. So, if you've come up short, somebody else will make up the average for us.
Right. That they do. We work with customs. We work with customs and the Border Patrol. They're a big believer in watching the jugular vein. Are you?
Only just as a stress marker. And it can tell me if that spot or that topic really bothers the person, so I might follow up on it as the interviewer. So maybe they're not the actor as such, but they have intimate knowledge about something else that's going on. So it not necessarily deception, but it may be a signal telling me I need to follow up on this conversation. What was the trigger that set this off? The way I look at interrogation or interviewing, it's not just answering a bunch of series of questions. Anybody can do that. It's finding the right topic to ask the questions about. Most people as interviewers just kind of speed through it. They're just cruising along like browsing the internet. Great interviewers have good penetrating questions, and they'll dig and dig until they find the answers they want. And that's the difference between the two that are successful.
We're going to take a brief break. We're going to talk about impact analytics. We're with Stan B. Walters, the lie guy. All right, Yoda, we have a friend, sideband, with impactanalytics.com.
Okay.
I work with Tim Kalin, nicknamed Sideband in Beirut at the U.S. Embassy bombing and the Marine Barracks bombing. Check out his site, Impact Analytics. Fast forwarding here, Tim runs a consortium of conservative folk. They join together with a bunch of emails which command high-value advertisers. At the end of the month, Tim sends you a whole bunch of money for sending him a list of emails. It's straight up, not too good to be true. If you've got maybe 1,000 emails in a list, contact Tim Kalin, Impact Analytics in Florida. I say again, Tim Kalin, Impact Analytics in Florida. Back to Stan, the lie guy. We're back, Stan.
Yeah, Stan B. Walters, the lie guy, and Voices of Global Freedom Radio. We just got a question that came in.
Mm-hmm.
It's from Knoxville, Tennessee. It says, what's your opinion of the polygraph, which Intel folk called the flutterbox?
I love the nickname. It all depends on the operator. It's just like a doctor or a NASCAR driver or even the guy working behind the computer. If scalpels and race cars are really cool things, but if you see me handling either one of them, we're in trouble. It's all about the examiner. The device does what it's supposed to do, but it's still a tool in the hands of the examiner themselves. So I've said if I am in trouble and I know I'm wrong, and I want to try to get myself cleared, I know of examiners that I can hire who will make sure that I pass the exam. If I'm innocent and I want support, I know some phenomenal experts. They're the first ones that I'll have to come do an exam on because I trust their expertise and their experience.
You've been called the human polygraph before. How did you get that name?
It's just kind of a label that somebody puts on you because of the work that I do. I'm as fallible as anybody else. I have to work and concentrate on my skills constantly. Just like anybody else who's in a particular field of expertise, constantly researching, constantly interviewing. Nobody's 100%. Even in the best conditions in research we've seen, not laboratory conditions, we can get people at 90% accurate. But that's under lab conditions. In the field, there's a lot of things that can happen. There's biases that come in. There's times that we only have about a 7-second attention span to focus our concentration as human beings now. So you've got to really be dedicated and keep interviewing by passing over a topic area 2 or 3 times and being aware of what's scientific fundamentally, what's the right way to make an assessment. And you can't make a single assessment on just one reaction. You've got to make sure it's consistent, and there's a logic involved at the same time. But so it's just a label that somebody's given me. It's the same one that the lie guy, I got that. The first email I ever had was on AOL, and an arson guy was telling me, hey, when you get email, you'll learn how to use it. He called himself the fire guy. And I thought, So they said, pick a screen name. I said, okay, the lie guy. I had no idea. Well, when the media heard that, they immediately started calling me the lie guy. And that's when I went ahead and trademarked it and hold a registered trademark on that title.
That's great, Stan. We have seen you on numerous CNN, Fox News interviews where they've called upon you. One of the most famous shows is the Scott Peterson murder trial. What were your thoughts on that? You brought up on so many things where he was being interviewed and you could see him smiling. What are your thoughts on that?
The couple of examples I use in class where he demonstrates a behavior called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance, and it's a principle back from the late 50s. And I think, and I've been digging really hard on this and doing some documentation on it, I think this is the source point of where lying happens. And it goes beyond culture, it goes beyond gender, age, emotion. It's really the seed where lying happens. He's asked in one piece of the interview by Diane Sawyer, at the very beginning, let me ask you the question everybody is wondering, did you kill your wife? And he demonstrates a cognitive dissonance slur, and you get a low-end body language reaction. It's called aversion. That's I call it the dislike behavior, where his head moves away, but it's very low order. It's about like 58%, 60% liable, and it does a multiple no response. But the reaction is at that question. About 3 minutes later, she asks him, "Did you ever hit her? Did you ever harm her?" And he has that same reaction again. But in between, he doesn't react to that at all. Only those two topics was violence against his wife. When I did that for ABC out in Seattle, that segment, it was before they found his wife. And I was watching that part of the tape where she asked, "Did you hit her? Did you ever harm her?" And I kind of said under my breath when I saw his reaction, he beat her. Well, come to find out when they found her body in May, she had 7 broken ribs perimortem. And so that's how we use this information. You know, you may not have anything at hand, but does it give me the lead to look at later? The other spot that I was really good, Diane asked him, was about his affair with Amber Fry. And in about 40-second response, he says, it was inappropriate. I owe her family and friends an apology. And he said, it should have been brought forth by me immediately, the romantic relationship. Now, remember that segment. He said, it should have been brought forth by me immediately. And then Diane asked, did you tell anyone? Did you tell anybody? And immediately says, I told the police immediately. Well, Scott, you just told us you didn't bring it up. She then asks him when, which is a great follow-up question, hitting that hot spot. And he has a huge cognitive dissonance moment again, trying to lie about when he told the cops about Amber Fry. So it's those topics that kept consistently coming up, and that's where I could find the markers, in my opinion, watching him, where I believed he was being deceptive, not only to the media, but then also to the law enforcement personnel.
That's a common expression. I work with the VA in La Jolla, the VA hospital, Center of Excellence, UCSD. And I don't know the context, but that's a popular jargon and common expression with people suffering from shell shock or whatever it is now. You know, I don't know the context they use it in. But you hear cognitive dissonance all day long there. Are you able to identify deception watching people on TV often?
Within the parameters. The media, and it's just a matter of they got to compress time and they've got to give you the highlights which sells the best or gets the attention. Unfortunately, a lot of times they've edited so much that I can't pick up continuity, or they'll play questions out of sequence of the interview. Now, a lot of times when I get a hold of the raw interview, that's when I can do a better job and make some type of intelligent assessment. One question responses sometimes give you a strong hint, but I like to test the waters 2 or 3 times, and using different stimuli approaches, different questions, to make sure that I haven't just overread something or I've got a bias involved, that I really am getting a trigger, like with Scott Peterson, always when he's asked about violence against his wife. So it depends on the venue, and 2 or 3 minutes is really, really hard to get a good reading on somebody.
A guy in Lake Charles here on email wants an example of that, if you will, Tim.
An example of what?
Wants an example of. That's all he asked here.
Oh, an example of cognitive dissonance? Okay.
Yeah.
Cognitive. Well, think of lying, and this goes all the way back to how lying works. What does a liar have to know first in order to tell a lie that's be successful? Well, first they've got to know the truth they're covering up, the truth they want to hide. And the mind is a single-track system. And this goes with you guys that's suffering PTSD and shell shock, too, because they got a second dialogue going on. So that you have the first window to think like a computer. The first window, here's the truth with all my cognitive and emotional and sight, sound, taste, touch, smell, time inputs in a very complex embedded code, if you will. In deception, I have got to create a second window that modifies or avoids some of those elements when I'm trying to mislead the other person. And so now I have two windows open, two trains of thought. And I think that the best description I've ever heard of cognitive dissonance is called being of two minds, which fits perfectly with, I love that example you talk about the PTSD guys, because there's so much stimulus going around them that their thoughts are something else, and it's very hard for them to concentrate on the immediate circumstances. Well, the liar has the same problem. Now, the second part is once he's got to create that second dialogue that sounds credible, he's going to remember that stuff. I think it was Abraham Lincoln, Mark Twain, and I think Benjamin Franklin all said the same thing. Close to it, if you're going to engage in occupation deception, you better have a good memory, because you got to remember all that stuff, a la Brian Williams, for example. I heard terrible joke. I heard that he said he'd survived being shot down in Harrison Ford's plane, so that's safe. That's terrible. I'm sorry, but I stole it from Facebook. Okay, but think though of somebody, and one of the forms of deception is hype. Well, whether we hype our experiences or hype our successes or failures or whatever. Okay, so now I got to keep that story. Think of the guys with stolen valor, for example. They claim they were special forces and weren't, and they steal other people's stories. Well, when really questioned by a combat veteran, they can tell them, "Dude, you weren't there," because they don't have all those sensory inputs of the experience. So you have two windows now: the window of the truth, the window that's the lie. Now, the liar has to watch the person they're lying to see if they're believing it. Remember, it takes two people for a lie to work: the target and the person doing the lying. Without both those, you don't have a lie working. If the liar doesn't get the feedback from the target they're lying to, they'll modify or start to oversell or push the story. That's when they start creating these dissonances, these convoluted or contradictory statements, or they oversell too much, if you will. Then they also have to be aware of their own symptoms. Like a poker player, I can't give away any tells so the guy knows that I'm bluffing. So as the interviewer, I look for those noisy spots where the liar's strategy is to avoid time, places, and people. And when I see those spots or hear those spots, that's where I'll go back and I'll follow up with my question. So now I'm challenging that second window. At the same time, in the reality window, there's that conflict going on. How much do I tell? How much do I not tell? And that's what creates what we refer to as cognitive load or cognitive dissonance. So that's why I'm looking for those topic areas. Then I just start, and I kind of keep my voice calm and quiet. But it's great penetrating questions just about the topic area the person is struggling with.
A quick anecdote. It's like an anecdote, only it's mine. I used to travel like you do. And for a while, everybody I met, all of my male seatmates were in special forces. No doubt about it.
Yep.
And I would ask them where they trained. Fort Sill, Oklahoma. But now they're all actually. We work with the SEALs here. We're running an investigation on the downing of some SEAL Team 6 guys in Afghanistan in that helicopter. But everybody we meet now, the office at the corner of Camp Pendleton. And aside from the Marines, everybody we meet, we're in the SEALs now.
Yeah.
Of course, they don't know where they train.
Sure.
The question
and finally ask about buds, they have no idea what a buds is.
Exactly. Buds belongs on a flower. Anyway.
Yeah. Or in a baggie in Colorado.
Exactly. God's truth.
Yoda, one thing, Yoda and I were just talking to one guy who he claimed to be in combat in Iraq and took down 16 people. We found out later that he was using a butter knife and eating toast, and so it was that's a true story, honest. So we can easily find people who claim to have all these things
Yep.
Do
Well,
sociopaths...
I had a guy like that in class that his girlfriend was in class, and he told her that he turned down an appointment to West Point, but he went in the Army anyway, and that he was asked to go into Special Forces and then went into Delta Force, but they finally decided he was a psychopath, and they threw him out when he was 24 years old. And I thought, boy, you made a whole lot of accomplishments in 6 years to make it all the Delta Force and get thrown out. Well, I had 2 SEER guys, trainers in the class, and they heard the conversation. They go up there and says, "We need to talk to you, young lady." And they straightened her out about this boyfriend who claimed all this hero stuff, Superman.
Well, I bet Superman is a SEAL today. They've got all the popularity and the glory,
Mm-hmm.
What have you got there, Spectre?
We just got a question from Seattle, Washington. Can people be trained to beat the polygraph test?
You don't beat the polygraph, you beat the examiner. Now, and I'm not an examiner, so we're at the edge of my knowledge base. I got some good buddies in intelligence and experts that could do a little bit better. It still depends on the quality of the question, how they frame it, how penetrating the questions are. I would not be surprised if there was some training on countermeasures. But again, on the countermeasures, you're not beating the instrument, you're beating the examiner. The examiner's not picking up on his charts and not phrasing his questions correctly.
We got a follow-up question to that. Is there? Would you know if the polygraph machines are they constantly being updated? The technology we see technology changing so much these days.
Sure. Worked with a guy back. I did some work with Johns Hopkins University back about 15 years ago in creating a CD training program for the Justice Department. And a guy named Dale Olson. Now, there's a good guy sometime you ought to talk to also. He developed the PolyScore, and it's using very complicated algorithms. And so it would take, for example, I'm not sure the database, but I'll pull a number. Let's say we had 500 known polygraph tests. And it would keep all that data, what was failed and what was not failed. So then when they give you the test, the PolyScore would look back at all these other known tests and compare the data they output and would give percentages as to what was, there's a good chance X percentage he's being deceptive. This one, such a percent for second, third. Now, do you recall the case of the boyfriend and girlfriend that were both in different military academies and murdered the other girlfriend of the male? And it was a bunch of years ago. I bet 15 years ago, I guess it was. I can't remember which one of the military academies they were in. That case was used, they used that PolyScore system on that case, on the polygraph of the couple who had murdered the third girl. It was used there. So there are some advances it's in terms of the equipment. There is a lot of work on with American, I can't think of it. It's with ASTD, I think it is. Standards and Training and Development. They're working hard to bring the requirements and the standards to a very much higher level all the time. They're constantly researching that area. But it's getting there. But again, it's still all down to the training and skills and experience of the examiner.
Interesting, Stan. I've been polygraphed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
As in the business we are, and I had never thought of it that way. Sure. It's indeed all about the examiner, like you said. Sometimes
right.
I will generate more, what do they say, inconclusive.
Mm-hmm.
Usually I sail through it, but if I don't have the maximum rapport or at least common indifference to the examiner, no problem.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If there's some bad chemistry or not good chemistry, that examiner will come up with more inconclusives. That's interesting.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and the same thing too. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Stan.
But with your thinking of that too, my best friend was with the intelligence agency, And when they would ask him on the standard periodic exams, they asked him about theft, and he always had some odd tracings on it. So finally, after this bunch of times, he said to the examiner, he said, "Wait a minute, what are you asking me? What do you mean, have I ever taken anything?" With that question, he said, "Well, have you taken anything?" And he says, "I see you have something odd on here." And he asked Bill, said, "What are you thinking when I ask you that?" So when we were kids in college, and this is in the 30s when Bill was in college, he said, when we walk home, there was the old Coke machines, the Pepsi machines, that was a case and had the flopper doors on the top of them that you would open up, the gas station.
Right.
He said there was one there that the guy would chain it shut. And said we would go there and we'd lift up the middle and we'd steal a Coke. And we'd drink it, but later we'd take the bottle back. He said, every time you ask me if I've ever stolen anything, he said, that's what my mind goes to. So the guy rewrote the question. He said, other than that, 40 years ago, anything, and he passed the test. But it was that little strangest little nugget. It was showing some odd inconclusives in the question until they rewrote it.
A close friend of mine, a Phoebe, FBI agent, ran into a hostile, almost hostile Flutterbox guy. He came up all inconclusive, so he wisely asked for another examiner.
Right.
And with that examiner, he came out clean as a mother queen. But I appreciate that lesson. It is indeed about the examiner. I thank you. Go ahead, Backpack.
We're going to take a brief break, and we'll be back with Stan B. Walters, the lie guy. Energy Efficiency Pros, EE Pros, solutions that save you money. Are you a commercial business looking to reduce costs on your energy bill? Replacing traditional light bulbs with LED results in tremendous savings every month. Commercial, industrial, and manufacturing facilities from coast to coast are saving up to 90% on their skyrocketing costs of energy. Energy costs are rising every month, but using EE Pros Lighting saves money, time, and will bring you happier employees and customers. For a free audit and evaluation of your facility, contact or email Don Arrigo, president of EE Pros, at 480-585-9161. Tell Don that Backpack of Voices of Global Freedom Radio referred you. Yoda, have you had some experience with this?
I indeed have. I found a couple guys, one a hospital, another a manufacturer, has saved up to 80% on their energy bill. It's just incredible. There's a lot of rebates involved. I don't know the details. Return on investment is less than 12 months. So with you, Backpack, call Don Arrigo at the number Backpack said to call. What's the number?
Well, go visit eepros.com. I say again, eepros.com, and tell them Backpack and Yoda sent you. Thank you.
Back to Brother Stan. We're back with
Stan B. Walters, the lie guy.
Hey, guys.
Stan,
hey, guys.
You've been on some high-profile cases. Have you been called upon as an expert witness in some trials before?
Been called to testify as an expert, do the depositions. Has not made it to trial, thank goodness, on some cases where there's some where the appropriate interviewing tactics, or could this be a false confession? And of the 321 false confessions through the Innocence Project that have been cleared using DNA, 25% of those cases were the result of false confessions by the suspect. Of those 321 cases, 75% of them, contributing factor was misinterviewing or poor handling the interviews of victims and witnesses, just to show how critical that part of the interviewing is. I've worked about 7 of those cases in the background, or at least up to the deposition phase, in reviewing the tactics that interviewers are using. And was it appropriate, inappropriate? Was it a contaminated statement? And that goes to something that you were talking about, Yoda, with your polygraph. Interviewers, just like the polygraph examiner was hostile towards you, contaminates the test and your reaction. Interviewers can also contaminate the victims and witnesses you're interviewing, as well as the subject, by the way they approach them, how they conduct the interview, or by using what's referred to as SUE, S-U-E, strategic use of evidence. If they reveal it too soon and try to use it as a leverage, what you wind up doing is giving up your ace card. You show your hand. Later, the subject will repeat that back to you, and you think you've got a confession when in fact it's just an echo. So I've reviewed several cases like that, and to assist in trying to correct the mistakes or to try to protect officers who have done their jobs, and the person just found an opportunity. Let's sue the police and see how much money we can get.
Backpack and I are members of CON here. It's really the California Association of Hostage Negotiators. You could be of enormous value to that association at our meetings. What's the least amount of time you spend in a seminar or in a meeting or at the podium? What's the least amount of time you spend with it?
In 90 minutes, I can kind of edutain you. A little education, a little entertainment. When we start getting to 4 hours to 1 day, at least I can give us some good insight and plant some seeds. I'm trying to change the culture of how we do interview and interrogation. We're missing 60% of information that we should be collecting. And I've worked with other hostage associations and individually with some of their folks at the same time, and I had them in class, and they like the narrative concept, and particularly how I pick out how to watch the reactions and response behaviors. A 4-hour block, they give me a breakout session. I can at least start having them salivate a little bit and look for what they can do to add to their toolkit. The full-blown class is 5 days. And in my advanced class, I don't think I told you, you may not know this, but I've been in 30 prisons. Let me correct that. I've visited 30 prisons. I guess that's the right word there. I take my classes in the advanced course to prison, and they spend 8 hours in prison interviewing inmates for 8 straight hours in what we view a cold read. And my negotiators love that because it's just like walking into an unknown situation and have to deal with the subject's reaction and response and get as much information out of them as you can. And I've done that in 30 prisons. I got 1,200 of those on videotape that I use from my research on studying interrogation tactics.
What's a memorable prison you were visiting? Yeah.
Just did one last year. I was in an institution in Texas and stumbled on to a Syrian fighter pilot who was in prison on a fraud. And he'd only been in there for 2 days. And he had fought back in the 60s, flew the MiG-25. And the guy was trained in art, in the art of war, in weapons, in combat, in Clausewitz, in politics, lived in France. Very intelligent guy. And we let the students interview him, do their normal 45-minute interview. But my buddy and I, Randy Merriman, we worked together in training. We developed part of the program, the Combat Hunter program for the Marine Corps. And we trained counter-operative information and watching terrorists and behavioral analysis. So we kept him for the whole day. And Randy and I talked to him extensively about his training, about the Middle Eastern attitudes and ideas about the U.S. and what he had learned, what he would share with us. And it was fascinating to hear it from the other side, of the fence. But the guy was dragging down $2.5 million a month in his business. Owns 2 aircraft, has fixed wing and rotary wing rating, and I was able to document was in fact a MiG-25 pilot.
I've got another Yoda anecdote for you.
Okay.
One of my sons works in a Midwest total lockdown, full security place, for the insane. In this joint, there are 340 sex-oriented Hannibal Lecters. Can you imagine his stories? So he's been surrounded. He's a lieutenant in this joint. They're along law enforcement correctional lines, but picture being immersed in 340 virtual Hannibal Lecters. I've squeezed a lot out of my, I've done all this, or I think I have, but his stories are just monumental of what these creeps can do. Be interesting for you to talk to some of them, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I love getting inside the guy's mind and wandering around in the swamp, and just I've talked to several serial killers and cop killers, and the students are interviewing, I'm interviewing inmates at the same time, and if we understand how they think, and then there was a statement made 2 or 3 months ago about having empathy for the terrorist, and at first I'm thinking, okay, are they using the term right? But if you really get in and understand what's driving them, how they conceptualize their situation, and it would be fascinating to talk to these guys, because then you'll never walk into an interview with another one like them and never be at a loss as to how they think, how they behave, and what to say to them, and what's driving their behavior. I love that human intel collection from experiences of those types of people, from arsonists or from child abusers or from serial rapists or serial homicide, poisoners and that kind of stuff. That fascinates me.
The founding editor of our magazine, themagnifiedview.com, editor-in-chief, her name is Janorama. She has also been second chair in live cartel hostage negotiations. This is hardly a wallflower gal. Well, she heard some of the stories from this funny farm and it curled her hair. The stuff they do. Anyway, I'll talk to them about getting you there. I don't want to identify the joint further on air. I've been in several prisons of my own volition, as you have, and I think they're good places to stay out of, really. Have you been?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Stan.
No, I agree with you. Yeah, I just want to stay for a little while, and it's just nice to go home and drink a beer and eat a steak.
We say again, have you worked at any of the privately run prisons?
No, I've just worked on the state level ones. I haven't been into. There's a company, and if I said the name, I'd screw it up. But there is a corrections private group that has been taking some of the contracts from the states, and I understand doing a pretty good job of managing the institutions and handling the inmates. So I've had some of their staff in my classes, but I've not got to visit their institutions.
Question here, Stan, the lie guy. We got a question out of New Orleans.
Yeah.
They wanted to know what's your opinion on the voice stress analysis and how that indicates whether a person is lying or not? I've
got a heavy science background, and I refer to the scientific studies and the research that I can find. I have tracked about it's documented 26 studies, and it might be the 28th if it's been published recently, that it does not live up to its reputation. The best that I've seen in any results has been no better than 50-50 or a flip of a coin. And I'll probably I'll get a lot of hate mail and everything over that, but I've yet to see any empirical evidence that shows in fact, it was banned by the military because it was being used at Gitmo, and some of the guys that they cleared were being turned back out into the world and coming back again as enemy combatants. And so the Army, the U.S. military Defense Department has banned its use within their services.
Have any of the sociopaths that you've come across been able to fool you?
Probably, yeah. There's no way to know every single lie that you've been told. There's just too much of a volume, and there's going to be times that your antenna's not up and you're going to miss it. I'm sure there has. The ones I've talked to in prison, I only have a limited time, so I can't sit and delve constantly, keep working them. For example, like what Pirro would do with Saddam, for example, over days and days and days, which is probably the best way to do them, to keep, to really get inside them and get to know them. And again, the advantage of psychopath, sociopath is they are usually such good social animals and good at reading other people that the problem is you fall in like with them, as I like to say. A guy did some training under Dr. Ron Holmes out of the University of Louisville. Interviewed, for example, he was a CIA analyst and behavioral analyst, and he had interviewed Ted Bundy. And he told the story in class. He's heading back from Stark, Florida, at one point, and he's saying to himself, Bundy couldn't have done this stuff. There's no way. He's a nice guy. How could he do this? And he said he pulled over to the side of the road, and he stopped and said, "You stupid fool. You know what that man is, and you still bought into it." Even Dr. Robert Hare, Hare, Dr. Robert Hare of Canada, who's probably the leading expert on antisocial behavior, says even as the guy who wrote the checklist, the diagnostic tool, says he has been burned by psychopaths. So I'm sure I have.
Another quick
Sure.
anecdote. I fell for one early. I was a street cop in Cleveland. Anyway, this idiot would go burglarize a home. He would then be sent to Ohio Penitentiary. He would get out, finally, on parole. He would go burglarize the same home again. This is what he did. So, if you will, I had kind of I was young as I ever was. I had kind of a rapport with this guy. I kind of liked the guy, if you will. So on one of his got out and burglarized the damn home again about 6 in the morning one winter day. I lit him up. I pulled him over and him in his car. And for some reason I had a pistol down my right leg held in my hand. This was not a violent guy previously. When I went up to the car, he had a gun in his hand, a pistol. Said had he not seen my pistol, he was going to shoot me. So that was obviously an indelible lesson for me about learning to like these guys or stay professional with it. That's 100 years ago, Stan, and it stayed with me, I think, vividly to this day.
Yeah.
Hard to stay professional sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, as soon as you take shortcuts or court corners, you're going to get burned.
Tell me a shortcut.
Well, for example, at the time that the officer walks back in a traffic stop, I interviewed a guy who murdered a cop, put a 12-gauge deer slug in the guy's face because he stopped him when the bad guy has car broken down on the side of the road on I-70. And he got it going. Cop stopped, got out, walked back. He said he walked with his hands in his pockets and his head down in just a motorist assist. Well, this guy was running from a drug raid by DEA up in Illinois. And he just reached in the back seat, took a 12-gauge shotgun, and said when the guy looked up, that's when he pulled the trigger. Yeah. So it's every single time. Top of the game, always alert, situational awareness 100% of the time. Those times you cut corners and are prepared, that's when you could lose your life.
I couldn't agree more, Sam. I call it I teach that, and I call it complacency.
Yes.
I won't. I've got a couple more Yoda anecdotes, but I'll spare you till the next time. I did a couple other massive screw-ups that I got so lucky in pulling it off. I let everybody else be brilliant. I don't mind being lucky sometimes.
Yeah.
We'll take a short break with Stanby Walters, the Lie Guy, and we'll be right back. Voices of Global Freedom, Magnified View, Patriotic American Hero. This is Backpack. We want to tell you about a brave American hero, Brigadier General Ernest C. Audino. United States Army, retired. Currently serves as senior advisor to the Kurdistan National Assembly of Syria. He has been our show multiple times. He also serves as a senior vice president of Radon Corporation. Check out his website, generalaudino.wordpress.com. I say again, generalaudino.wordpress.com. Yoda, are we privileged to be working with General Audino?
He is a soldier. The good general was embedded with the Kurds in northern Iraq and Syria. He lived, slept, ate with them, and was wounded in combat with them. He had a small team. I think he spent about 11 months living amongst the Kurds, fighting the evil bastards of ISIS. So we hold him in the highest respect and affection. Thanks, Backpack.
Thank you. We're back with Stan B. Walters, the lie guy. We just got a question. You had mentioned before about the Innocence Project. I want to know more if you've worked with, he was a former O.J. Simpson lawyer. I think his name is Cohen. I forget exactly his name, but have you worked directly with him on that project?
No, I've not worked with the Innocence Project. I choked up over that one. I'm aware of their work, and I respect the work that they do because you do your best work when you're challenged and when you have to defend each step along the way. And I think they're necessary for us to be at the top of our game and to improve. But I've not done work or contracted with the Innocence Project itself. Pardon me.
So you've got a long career working with law enforcement and intel operations. What are some of the unexpected moments that you've had?
Sitting in class, some of the people that you meet, that they're almost kind of invisible in the classroom. In Las Vegas 2 years ago, sitting in the same classroom, I had the commander of the SWAT team that took down the Boston Marathon bomber, and right across from him was the Army CID investigator in charge of the Fort Hood shooting, both in the same classroom. So it's enjoyable to have private conversations with them and their insights and what they've learned, what they can share, their experiences, that things that I can't share with other people, but learn from them, from those cases that they've been involved in.
I've got a similar Yoda anecdote. I had lunch with the FBI agent that negotiated the Maersk ship piracy. Remember that?
Yeah, sure do.
Great guy. Been my privilege to work with some of the Phoebe's finest negotiators. Mm-hmm. One here just retired. Another gal is in Omaha. I wish you could meet with them. You could really help them. You could help their negotiators a lot.
One of my good friends over in Nebraska is retired now, was Nebraska State Trooper, and she was phenomenal negotiator. They had gone through all the work with Dominic Messino at NYPD, Frank Bowles. What's the PhD's name? Yoda, I can't think. Out of New York. Brain death.
I know both, of course. His name
was
was sworn off their name, Ginsburg, or like that. I can never remember the name.
I can't remember. Yeah, you and I got so many names in our heads. It's our contact list doesn't keep up. But when she would do exercises with her troopers, she would be the hostage taker. And she could say, "I can hear you smiling on the phone."
Yeah. In my opinion, there are two courses of the finest in the world. It's a lot of role playing, as you would know, and it puts everybody in a frame that they should be in.
Right.
Great course. Right. A friend of mine's active in Omaha. You get over that way, I'd like you to meet her.
Right.
You got any plans to go to Omaha?
I've got an in and out real fast. I'll be working with the special investigation units from the insurance companies from the International Association of SIU in Omaha on March 30th. But I get in the night before, and I leave that next evening as soon as I get done to head to Missouri to work for the Department of Natural Resources over there.
I'll talk to you off air. Maybe you can shake hands with her anyway somehow.
Sure, love to. Yeah. Sure.
Quite a gal, extraordinary gal, really.
Mm-hmm.
Not a run-of-the-mill gal. Anyway.
Right. Right.
We really enjoyed your 6 tips. How are you progressing with your 101 tips? How's that coming along?
I've got 60 of them already prepared and recorded, so I've got the others written down. Just a matter of getting some time. I got a little bit of office time here coming up, and I'll probably shoot to have about 75 of them ready, and leave the rest kind of open into which ones get the most attention. Something may come up before I have the whole series done that I think I'll replace one with another. So I'm probably finish up to get about 75, 80 of them in the cans that are all set and ready to go. And it's those little tidbits that like you've had, Yoda and Backpack, those little momentary 1-second learning moments that doesn't really fit necessarily in a class outline. It doesn't necessarily fit in a structured classroom. It's the things you only learn from somebody who's been there or somebody who's had it happen to them, or if you had it happen to yourself.
How are you going to publish those?
Well, I'm just going to do right now. I'm just going to do it all through the YouTube, and they set up. And everybody's welcome. It's a free series. Go to YouTube youtube.com/TheLieGuy and subscribe to the list, and you'll get it in your mailbox each week. At the end of it, I may go ahead and put it into an ebook or into a self-published book with a little more background to it as found as a published piece. But that'd be about 2 years down the road when I finalize that. So right now, I just want to get things in people's hands and give them just a 2-minute tidbit each week to think about that they can slowly incorporate in their skills and their toolbox that they use.
Really generous of you. Tell us about your books, if you will, how we can get a hold of it.
I've got 2 that are there. Well, and I've also got an ebook that everybody's welcome to get. The textbook, The Principles of Kinetic Interview and Interrogation, is hardcore soup to nuts interrogation stuff. That's the cornerstone. That one we've a lot of our military and counter intel and Joint Terrorism Task Force units and CID Army units use that for their training materials. We shipped a case of those over to Bagram, to the detention facility, and also to Central Command in Baghdad during the middle of the height of the conflict, because guys were finding value in it. You can find that out at my website at a discounted price, by the way, from the publisher's price. So if you're really a hardcore interrogator, that's the one you want to look for. The lighter read is The Truth About Lying, How to Spot a Lie and Protect Yourself from Deception. And that's designed more for the everyday life for like school resource officers or school counselors or business people. It's not the interrogation stuff, but surviving in business conversations or with family and friends or in the workplace. That was also I got that at a discounted price from the publisher also at the website thelieguy.com. But I've got something special for the folks if they want a little snapshot of what I teach. If they'll go to tiny, now all lowercase letters, tiny.cc/ebook-offer. All those in lowercase letters. Then they'll get the free ebook, which is about a 36-page overview of the 5-day course that I teach. So it's available to everybody for free.
Do that again.
Okay, it's tiny, like a Tiny, like little, tiny.cc/ebook-offer, and that'll no spaces. And that'll take you to the order form where you can get that, and it'll send you the link to download that ebook as my gift.
That's generous.
That's great.
Quite generous.
And just tell the guys, folks, hook up with me on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, and we're all in this together. And if we're not helping each other, the bad guys sure are collaborating against us, and we need to collaborate with each other and put down all the political boundaries and the rivalries if we're going to get the job done and get it done right.
That's great. One of the questions that's come in is about your comments on Guantanamo Bay. If you want to talk about, in general, like the pros and cons of it, or just whatever you want to speak to Guantanamo, and have you ever had an opportunity to participate in that at all?
No, I would love to. I think we need to keep the idea separated that there are enemy combatants until the conflict is over, and I just the way I feel is studying the history of war and interrogations and so forth, to be kept there. Now we treat them as human beings. I don't think we ought to be mistreating and abusing people. That's just not the nature of who we are as Americans. But same time you don't turn a rabid dog back loose and a savage back loose to have to fight that same dog again. And I know I've talked to a couple of the folks, the feds that are down there doing the interviews, and it's amazing the information intelligence we are gathering, and we're learning how our enemy thinks is what's going to help us defeat this group.
Story broke today about a stunning number of them are back on the battlefield. More than we thought. I saw that. Yeah, stunning.
Yeah. 167 was it?
Yeah, it's incredible. It's like a fishing thing in Dale Hollow Lake, Kentucky. You catch them and then you throw them back. I don't know.
Catch and release. Yep.
Here's one I wanted to ask you, and somebody's backing me up. I don't know where the email's from. You get around to a lot of agencies. You're up there in high echelon in there. What's your opinion or guess about terrorist attacks on Congress here in the United States?
When I talk to the folks, for example, I've asked the question, why have we not had suicide bombers? What are we doing? And the answer I get is, we don't know. We do not know. Now, again, my sources, and we've grown since then, and we may have more intel they're just not sharing with me, which I appreciate, compartmentalization. But either we are breaking them up soon enough, we're keeping them from getting organized, but I don't know what we're doing to stop them happening. It's interesting to go to some of the work that I do with Randy Merriman with training the counter IED work and reading suicide bombers and snipers. We have our teams conduct a red on blue attack, and this is part of them. I want you to think like a terrorist. We give them a hypothetical budget. Here's your target: maximum loss of life, biggest damage, highest profile. And you plan to attack. Now, if you get stopped or picked up, you fail the course. And I'm amazed as I surveil our teams, watching them go to a hotel or go to a convention center and move around and plan, that nobody notices them. Nobody pays attention to them. We are very unaware situationally as a country, as opposed to like they might be in Israel, where every day is a risk. We're such a soft target. It's just amazing. We have not had a Breslin, or I had an airport attack where they attacked the baggage claim, or a movie theater. I don't know what's keeping it from happening.
You remember Brian Jenkins with the Rand Corporation? Stan. Hello, Stan.
I'm here. Yeah.
Do you remember Brian Jenkins with the Rand Corporation?
I remember Brian Jenkins' name, yeah.
A friend of mine, we had the same conversation in 1974. In my opinion, he's the ultimate counter-terrorist always was. But we had an identical. What I see different today is we're sending everybody over there. They're going over to fight with ISIS and coming back without a visa. Thousands of them. We've got them crossing the border. They're being trained in mines. And Backpack here uncovered terrorist training camps in the United States. Did you not, Backpack?
Yeah, that's right. We have a website, which is a accumulation of many different articles and commentary out there called terrorcamps.com. I say again, terrorcamps.com. And it's also featured on magnifiedview.com, which has brought to light just an aggregation of so many different articles that are out there on the internet. It's, as far as we know, it's the only website devoted to bringing all those together and identifying all across the United States. There's at least over 35 United States Islamic Muslim terror training camps that are being quiet sleeper cells right now.
We have, Stan, real insiders, and they are all predicting an imminent attack from one of the four sources, including the border, or the non-border.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So the guys and the gals I respect are predicting a rather imminent attack here. Whether suicide bombers or, whatever. As you well know, the bad guys pick the weapon, they pick the time, they pick the method and the target.
Right.
We see something bad coming our way anyway. Where can we get a hold of you? Where can the audience get a hold of you?
You can catch me through email. That's usually the very fastest way to get me, because sometimes I'm on the platform teaching. Sometimes I'm in a SCIF facility that's, secured. Even pacemakers don't work inside of them. But I'm usually pretty quick to check email, normally within the hour. Otherwise, you can catch me at my office. I'm over in the East Coast, or in Kentucky, Eastern Time Zone. It's posted there on my website at 859-873-7005. And my sweetheart, that we've been married 39 years, we met when we both worked for the FBI. So I can come home and talk cases, and she'll know as much about my work as I will. And we have super sneaky ways that she can reach out and get to me within just moments in most cases, unless I'm on an aircraft. And she can track me down fast, and we'll get back to him as fast as I can possibly get loose and get the phone call.
My favorite FBI agent worked as a tour guide in the headquarters before he became a... He did. Mm. You did better than tour guiding, I guess. What was your biggest surprise in all these years in learning your trade?
I guess probably the biggest thing is that the information and the skills and the knowledge of human behavior is out there, but at least in the law enforcement, in the law enforcement side, in some cases military, and I don't want to put a blanket on everybody, but how much knowledge we've lost that we haven't followed up on. I'm going to kind of give away something here. Do you remember, and I bet you would, remember the name Hans Scharf, the master interrogator of the Luftwaffe?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he came to the U.S. and I guess 49, and he taught interview and interrogation, a non-threatening, highly productive interrogation strategies. I believe he was in Illinois until his death in 1992. He got more information from Allied flyers and pilots and bombers and navigators than anybody in the entire Luftwaffe. And he taught us here in the United States. Well, I've taught some intel folks and picked alphabet soup and for the military. They don't know his name. They don't know who he is. They don't know what he did. And we've lost such a wealth of information. And of course, we got a certain amount of churning. Officers coming and going and military coming and going. So I know we lose that in some of the turnover. But I'm amazed at some of the things that I've learned and studied, and that our people don't know and need to know to survive in the job. And it starts in our training, starts in our academies, and starts with our dedication and diligence in being the best at human intel and gathering information for people.
If I'm not mistaken, he came here with Operation Paperclip when they imported all the time Werner von Braun crowd. Somehow he got in there.
Now, if you go today and look at any of the mosaic work done in the California State Capitol, the Los Angeles City Hall, and of Disney World and Disneyland, the castles, all that mosaic work is his and his daughter's. He became well known as one of the world famous mosaic artists.
Did he go to school?
But it's cool. They look him up on Wikipedia. It's got wonderful of how he treated prisoners and how he gained their confidence. They got to trust him, and how much information he gleaned from them without ever having to resort, in their case, with abuse. Now, to me, there's a difference between dealing with an everyday person versus psychopaths and savages. some of these things you could never get a psychopath or savage. It would not work with them. You got to deal with a totally different level of animal than the common soldier or the criminal or the thug or the con man.
What have you heard about North Koreans or Chinese in this field?
Most of it is just the backwater and unclassified intelligence stuff, open source stuff. I'm not so sure about the stability of their current president or premier or the dear leader. I think he's a little more unstable than his daddy. And it just as seeing as watching human behavior. And, having murdered some of his own aunts and uncles, I believe it was, who probably disagreed with him. And he's high-powered, and I studied Russian history and politics when I was in college because I was fascinated with it. It's the same socialist, communist pattern of elitism. Don't take no for an answer. Nobody delivers them bad news. Murder and disappear your opponents or anybody who contradicts you. And this guy seems to be real trigger happy and glad to do that very quickly. So I don't see a situation with them improving at all. But I don't think they've got the structural or the factory or the internal operations to mount a sustained attack, other than just one device or one rocket that gets lucky. I don't think they could sustain a battle just other than waves of human beings.
Yeah. They developed a lot of brainwashing back to the Korean Police Act.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we were trained that they work closely with the Red Chinese in their brainwashing program.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Well, and that goes back. That was some of the work that I noticed when you had posted on magnified view, on Impact Analytics, was mentioning Dr. Robert Cialdini's work. Yeah.
Right.
And on influence, and going from influence to persuasion to manipulation to coercion.
This has gone really fast. This thing will shut us down like a light switch. We're near wrap-up time. Tell us what you want us to take away from it. And you're not going to get away from us. We're going to get you back for a second time, if you will, Stan. It's been a great program. Email have almost turned up our computers.
Super.
To all the emails, I'm sorry we couldn't get to you, but we will next time. What are the takeaways, Stan? Please.
One of the things that I think about was a statement that Reagan had made: trust but verify. And that's the same thing with an interviewer. And my credo is that it's not the questions as you ask; it's the topics you ask questions about. So it takes listening. It takes and not being afraid to ask the question. Too many people are afraid to ask the question because they don't think they want to know, and we need to know. And the more you know, the more armed you are, and the more difficult your opponent's going to have in taking you down. Whether it's the interrogation or whether it's the politics, whether it's the policies of the government, you've got to be informed. And the greatest freedom we have is an informed, patriotic public.
What are people afraid to ask?
I was watching a traffic stop where it turned out to be a top 15 U.S. Marshals fugitive, and this guy just escaped from a federal prison, and he met every bit of description of the killer. He'd escaped out of North Dakota, and the patrol officer just was a cursory. It's almost like he didn't want to believe the guy he had in front of him was an escaped federal prisoner. And it's like, when you search Google, if you search plumber, you're going to get, because I looked the other day, 58 million hits. But if you search plumber, Jefferson County, Kentucky, Louisville, tankless water heaters, now you're down to 688 responses. People don't ask direct, penetrating enough questions of people they're dealing with to get the answers, to make a smart decision.
Interesting backtrack. We've got to get this back.
Yeah, it's been great. There was a big article about that, and was that the same one where he had happened to be have that dipping can that saved his life, and they were able to apply pressure to his wounds?
No. This was a guy. He was, a matter of fact, he was a Air Force sergeant, SEER trained. A guy named Richard McNair, and he was on the run for like 3 years before they finally caught him up in Canada.
What are your plans in 2015?
To fill my calendar with as many of the military and alphabet soup intelligence folks that I can possibly get to. I'm trying to change the whole face and concept and culture of how interview and interrogation is done. Trying to get us from the old archaic methods that we're using and trying to take us into next generation intelligence gathering, interviewing type for law enforcement and for military and intelligence.
Hell of a program, Stan. You give good program. We want to get further into it. We're going to get you back.
Yeah, it's been great having you on. I think one of your top 6 tips was when police go in to interrogate or interview a suspect, they're missing about 40% that's on the table. They're looking at one specific kind of like a horse blinder on. You know, you want to speak to that one tip that.
Boy, I learned from that.
Yeah, we walk away, we miss about 60% of the information that we should be getting. And too often, we're zeroed in on looking at just single lie signs. So it's like looking at one incident in the world through a straw. And we need to have a broader view of the conversation. If you're so fixated on that one little thing and you get that answer, you can walk away and miss the more important information. And again, it's coming to understand how people behave and what drives their actions.
I'm going to buzz you in a few minutes after the show if you're going to be there, Stan.
Sure. I'll be here.
Okay. Backpack.
Well, it's been great having you on the show.
Thanks, guys, for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. You be safe out there on the streets and be careful. It's been great having you. Thank you so much.
Okay. You guys be safe, too. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. It's been great having Stan, the Lie Guy, on. This is Voices of Global Freedom. We are syndicated among numerous shows, and we are also proud to be among the top 5 news picks on TopTalkRadio.com. And we are so excited about the future. Also, Ricky Robinson with the Spark Radio Network and K98 Talk is featuring us Drive Primetime every Friday on the SparkRadioNetwork.com. We want to thank everybody involved with putting this together, and Janorama with MagnifiedView.com, the editor-in-chief, and Yoda and Backpack. Thank you all so much, and have a great weekend.
Seconds.